Guillermo Del Toro, known for creepy crawlies, opening monologues, elaborate sets, and Ron Perlman. He has always been a director I have admired due to his fantastical worlds that are grounded in reality. Despite my admiration and respect for him, I have only seen 2 of his films prior to doing this video. He has always been a director I wanted to rank, and with the release of Frankenstein, I think now is a better time than ever to cover this man's work. And while he isn't quite my favorite director ever, he is still someone I have deep appreciation for with how he tells his stories. Despite having a few films I'm not too huge on, I wouldn't consider any of them bad. And some of his best films are hauntingly beautiful works of art that I can't wait to talk about. Anyways, no more preamble, let's start covering his movies. I won't waste any time and just say my bottom spot is Mimic for one very simple reason: studio interference. Mimic is a film that Del Toro disowned, and for good reason. There was a lot of creative differences from the Weinsteins, with Harvey even threatening to fire Del Toro. GDT even cited it as one of the worst experiences in his life. As a film, it's very clear the movie was tampered with, as the thematic complexity is weak compared to his other work. There are brief remnants of some deeper messages, but none of them were fully realized. There is an interesting idea with mimicry of the giant insects. I love the idea of a predator mimicking humans to prey on them, but there isn't anything done with the premise. Apparently, the original ending had one of the bugs perfectly mimicking a human, which would have been such a terrifying end. But of course, the Weinsteins had to have a happy ending, so it was cut. The themes of evolution and man's interferences with nature are also something to be desired. It's very surface level without anything to chew on. Even when watching the director's cut, which kept a few deleted scenes, it wasn't enough to save the film for me. Hell, the scenes added didn't seem that important. Like, there was a pregnancy plotline for some reason, and it isn't expanded upon at all. Like, why was that there? It sucks, as you can see a great film in this sanitized mess, but as is, it's easily GDT's weakest work to date. There are some positives with the film, however. The visual effects are really good. I love how gross the Judas breed are. They are absolutely disgusting in the best way possible. The tension and atmosphere in general is solid. There's a few genuine scares out of me, especially when the main characters were traversing the subway and we didn't know when one of the bugs is gonna pop up. Even with the many interferences, the film still takes risks, with the first 2 kills being children, which I found to be a really shocking and effective scene. The acting and characters were also pretty good. They're not amazing, but they serve the film well, and it could have been so much worse. Overall, while this isn't necessarily a bad film, it could have been so much more if Del Toro was given full creative freedom. Although it's pretty cool that this film was part of the inspiration for The Host, which is a great film, by the way. Go watch it.
Get a job? Yeah. Just get a job? Why don't I strap on my job helmet and squeeze down into a job cannon and fire off into Jobland, where jobs grow on jobbies?
So there are these types of films I like to call hotel hot tub movies. They are typically action blockbusters from the late 2000s to mid-2010s, such as your Transformers, your Fast and Furiouses, and whatever Battleship was. They are often on cable TV channels such as Sci-Fi, where the best way to watch them is sit in a hot tub with the bubbles on. This is how I would classify Pacific Rim. It's not a great film by any means. The characters are underdeveloped, the effects are well 2010 CGI, and the story is lacking. However, what makes it stand out compared to the films I mentioned is that it's by Guillermo Del Toro. And I will say this right off the bat, from a purely directorial standpoint, this is by far his weakest film. There isn't any shot that really screams Del Toro. The film is also very blue, which makes the action scenes feel very muddy since everything is blue. The mechs are blue, the kaiju are blue, the sky is blue, the light is blue, the blood is blue, Jesse Pinkman is blue. It just all blends together where you can't get a good look at anything. But Del Toro at his weakest obliterates Michael Bay at his best. There are still some great things in here, such as the designs of the kaiju and the Jaegers. I find them really cool, and there are some great shots, such as when one of the Jaegers walks past a few blocks. The scene where they truly shine is during the climax where they are underwater and everything just sticks out a lot more, and you can actually see what's happening far more clearly. The red lava helps making things pop out more. It's overall a really solid climax. Also, I do like the set design of the Kaiju Black Market, although I'm 99% sure it's a reused set from Hellboy 2, but it's still cool. The writing isn't great. So the film is about these brothers who pilot the mech, but one of them dies, so the protagonist has to deal with survivor's guilt. It's just not executed properly. You don't spend enough time with either of them to truly get their bond or feel anything when the brother dies. And you don't get enough out of Charlie Hunnam's performance to understand his grief. The female lead, played by Rinko Kikuchi, suffers far worse, unfortunately. I feel like her character is a fetishization of Asian women. It really rubs me the wrong way. She's all cute, ooh, kawaii anime girl, and it's just really gross. Also, her only character flaw is that she's emotionally unstable. Oh, goody! I did enjoy most of the other characters, though. Idris Elba as this captain is pretty good. There are a handful of frustrating scenes with him, but for the most part I enjoyed his character, and I felt his self-sacrifice was well earned. Speaking of, I do enjoy this Australian father-son duo. The son hates the protagonist while the father respects him, so there's this fun dynamic there. It's a nice switch up for the son to make the self-sacrifice, so that was pretty refreshing to see. Ron Perlman is as great as ever. He plays this black market kaiju salesman, and he's just so fun with how shady he is. Plus it was funny when he got eaten by the baby kaiju. Don't worry, he survives, he is just missing a shoe. But the real star of the show is Charlie Day as this kaiju fanboy. He's just so energetic and fun. It's so cool to see his passions for kaiju shine, especially when he enters the black market and geeks out. He bounces off every actor perfectly, and they all have great dynamics with him. Especially the scientist played by Bern Gorman, who is always worrying whether his calculations are right. They're just perfect together, and I need a spin-off series with these two characters pronto. Overall, while maybe a worse film than Mimic, I enjoyed it a lot more since it was clearly in GDT's vision and wasn't ruined by the Weinsteins. Also, no, I won't be checking out the sequel for obvious reasons.
Look, a magic puppet! 'Cause I'm a real boy, no strings attached!
Listen, I really wanted to like Pinocchio more on rewatch, but my opinions on the film have unfortunately stayed the same. I already went over most of my thoughts in my best animated feature ranking, and a lot of what I said still holds true, so do check out my video linked in the description. But to recap, I didn't like most of the songs, didn't really find the villain all that engaging, and most importantly, found the anti-fascism themes to be lackluster. This is especially the case now that I've seen Del Toro's other films, and how they handle similar themes. But there's one flaw that I only realized on rewatch, and that is I just don't really like this version of Pinocchio. This is mostly just a me problem, but I find him a tad too annoying for my liking, and as such I couldn't get any major attachments to him as a character. But I can't really think of a way where any of these aspects could be improved, so this is why I label this film as a not-for-me film. Because I fully understand what it's going for, but it's not a film I particularly love. That being said, there are still things that I think are great, such as the immortality themes, which I found interesting. Geppetto as a character was intriguing, and I liked his added depth that isn't in most other adaptations of the story. And of course, the animation is spectacular. Since this segment would be short otherwise, I would like to go more in depth as to why Del Toro, as well as other auteur directors such as Wes Anderson or Tim Burton, lean towards stop motion as opposed to other mediums of animation. You see, I view stop motion as a blend of the best attributes of both animation and live-action filmmaking. You still retain the exaggerated characters, the more out-there stories, and the abstract visuals, while also retaining the more technical aspects of live action such as lighting, set design, and cinematography. While they do exist in other animated films, They are either all digital or hand-drawn. So with stop motion you have real writing, a real camera, and of course real sets. This allows directors such as Del Toro more creative freedom without having to deal with the limitations of other mediums. It allows for his elaborate sets and beautiful camera work pop. It allows for Wes's symmetrical and stagnant style work, and allows Burton to not have to worry about black people not fitting his aesthetic. It also helps that stop motion ages the least out of any form of animation. Some directors have leaned towards motion capture, such as Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg, but over time the technology becomes a lot more dated, even within 5 years, while stop motion, even films from over 90 years ago, still look timeless, even as this medium has new advancements. They are immortal in a way, like Pinocchio, whose story has been told many times over centuries. Even as technology improves, I do not see stop motion or Pinocchio fading anytime soon. I don't know much about Blade as a character. I have never read any of his comics, and the only things I've seen him in were Deadpool and Wolverine and Marvel Zombies. While I enjoyed him well enough, it was only until this ranking where I actually got to check out the Blade films, because Del Toro directed the second one. So I watched the first film to prepare, and I didn't like it out too much. I just found it really boring. Wesley Snipes was good as Blade, and there was some neat action and cheesy effects, but everything else was mostly bland and uninteresting. Because of this, I was kind of worried to get into Blade 2, but to my surprise, I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected. It's still not amazing though, but it's definitely an improvement. One key factor in this is Del Toro's direction. There's just so much life put into this film that made it a lot more engaging. It's far more colorful and the action's more fun. The first action scene where Blade was retrieving Whistler is awesome, and it shows the vast improvement in the CGI, which still isn't great, but it's a lot more fun and less distracting. I do really like Wesley Snipes as Blade. I think he fits the role well, and he has this charm that just cannot be replicated. I also enjoy the other characters a lot more this time around, like Whistler, who was fine in the first film, but I actually got invested in his and Blade's relationship, and he got a lot more to do as well. I was kinda mad when the vampires started to bully him though. Leave Whistler alone. Scud was also a cool character, and I liked the contrast of him and Whistler. He also watches Powerpuff Girls all day, so that's pretty based. The other vampires are epic as well. I like their reluctance in helping Blade, and the rivalry that Ron Perlman has with him is super fun. And there was a lot of entertaining banter between them. The Reapers are terrifying though. I really loved their first scene where they just started to creep up on the cast. It was really tense and the effects on them were amazing. How their jaws split open to feed is unnerving and was done very well. The sewer action scene with the light bombs just eviscerating everything in its path is super fun as well. There is one major thing holding this film back though. It's the third act. They really dropped the ball with this. So the Reapers were genetically created by the vampire leader guy in order to create the perfect vampires, even though that doesn't make sense since the Reapers have a much higher metabolism and die a lot quicker. And then it was revealed that Scud was a familiar and was working against Blade the entire time? And somehow Blade knew it all along? It's so shit. None of this was properly set up in any way, and it really dragged the film down for me. Plus, the fight scenes right after felt a lot more like the first film's action, being boring as sin. Still, I'm pleasantly surprised how decent this film turned out to be. Hellboy was never a character I was familiar with, even less so than Blade. So I was curious going into the Hellboy films, and I completely get the hype around the character. He is just so cool and awesome, yet also a chill and sweet guy. I mean, he likes kittens! Ron Perlman is perfect for the role. His performance is excellent, and I enjoy the cheesy one-liners he says. I think how Perlman portrays both his gruff and soft sides is really well executed. I especially love the scene where he just talks with a random 9-year-old kid. It was a sweet and wholesome scene that showed Hellboy's humanity. The concept of a demon developing these human traits is always something I like, and this film does a great job at that. His relationship with his father is also great and definitely the emotional crux of the film. I did feel something when he died, and that is only because they set up his and Hellboy's relationship really well. The makeup on Hellboy is excellent. It allows him to emote while also making him look extremely cool, which is great. Speaking of great makeup, I love Abe Sapien. The collaboration of Doug Jones and David Hyde Pierce is great. They both give the characters so much life, and it's impressive that they got to pull it off. I also appreciate that you can see some future influences for Shape of Water with him, especially the scene where he connects to Liz. I also really dug his ability to see an object's history by touching it, but I do wish he was in the film more. Compared to most of his other work, I found the direction kind of lacking. I mean, it's still better than Pacific Rim, but it still doesn't feel like Del Toro. The only two scenes that I could really see his style in are the opening and the climax. The rest, while good, just didn't feel like him. I did enjoy the opening quite a bit though. It was atmospheric and tense and had some pretty gnarly kills, even if one was ruined by the Wilhelm scream. We also got to see baby Hellboy, and okay, yeah, while the makeup and practical effects are good, the CGI is kinda bad. There isn't a lot, thankfully, but whenever it pops up, it sticks like a sore thumb. I'm kinda mixed on one of the villains, Cronin. On one hand, I'm just against making the Nazi character look and act cool as it attracts unwanted attention. Plus, even ignoring that, the way he shows off and aura farms is kinda distracting. However, in the second half, he becomes really horrifying. Seeing all his cybernetic bits made him a lot more threatening in my opinion. Plus, even when he puts the mask back on, he is still scary. I mean, the way he laughs during the fight with Hellboy is chilling. The other villain, Rasputin, is okay. I wish he was in the film more as he really only had 2 scenes, but they are both solid enough. But I just don't buy him that much as a threat, unfortunately. My biggest problem with the film is the love interest, Liz. Oh my god, she is so shallow. Her only personality traits is that she is sad sometimes and has a relationship with Hellboy. Other than that, I could not tell you anything about her personality. I'm also uncomfortable with the fact that she needed to be hit for her to use her powers in that one scene. At least it was cool when she burned all the monsters, I guess. Overall, while I had a lot of problems, this was still a fun time and definitely makes me more interested in the character than I was previously.
Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick. Blood. I'll suck your blood. Oh, shit.
Directorial debuts are always interesting, since you get to see how the director started out. While not every debut is going to be on the levels as Reservoir Dogs or 12 Angry Men, they're still fascinating to watch, especially with directors with distinct styles like Del Toro. This is where Kronos comes in, his first feature film. You can already see some of his trademarks like insect imagery, religious themes, and beautifully elaborate set pieces. It is still primitive and doesn't go all out like his later work, but there are still some striking shots. I especially love the design of Claudio Brooks's office. It's all grays, which I find beautiful. And of course I have to mention the design of the device, which is so intricately made, but the inside is even better. It's biomechanical with a bunch of clockwork contrasted with fleshy bits that filter the blood. I love it so much. Onto the plot, which is about an old man named Jesus Gris, who finds this device which makes him appear younger after it stabs him. I will admit it took me a while to get fully invested. I love the technical aspects, sure, but the film only really clicked with me about an hour in, where it was revealed Jesus became a vampire. This recontextualized the prior scenes and made everything make more sense. This is genuinely such a cool reveal that made me like the film a lot more than I would have. I love the thematic depth this includes, since there was a moment where they were comparing mosquitoes to Jesus, and in the film, Jesus rises from the dead much like his namesake. You know, it's like poetry, it rhymes. My biggest complaint about the film is I felt the acting was kinda weak. None of it was bad, but there wasn't any standout moments for me, with one exception. Being the scene near the end where Jesus sacrifices himself instead of harming his granddaughter, which I found to be an emotionally effective scene. But back to the granddaughter. She is honestly my biggest problem with the film. She is just kind of there, even during the intense moments. She just stands there like nothing is happening. I'm not going to be too harsh on her since she is just a child, but I wanted a little more for some scenes to stick with me. But overall, this is a very solid debut for this fantastic director.
No music, just keep swimming.
Crimson Peak is an interesting film for me. While I did enjoy a large chunk of the film, there are just some creative decisions that don't sit right with me. But first, its atmosphere is perfect. It's set during the early 20th century in both America and England, so a lot of the set and costume design are elaborate in support of this era. There is also some excellent contrast here. Near the beginning, the sets are far more vibrant and elegant, with its score helping with the more upper-class feel. But once we go to the Sharps mansion, everything becomes a lot more darker. The set design, while still elaborate, is more decrepit. The score and sound design gives you a sense of unease. How this film sets up its atmosphere is excellent. The film is a gothic romance with an author named Edith Cushing, played by Mia Wasikowska, falling in love with an English baronet named Thomas Sharp, played by Tom Hiddleston. Both of these actors do a great job in their respective roles. It is also established very early on that the Sharps may be hiding something, with the scene where Edith's father is blackmailing Thomas. We don't know what exactly he has, but we can infer that it's bad due to how quickly he is to accept the offer. There's a few other scenes where the cracks show, like when Thomas is breaking Edith's heart. You can see by his expressions that what he is doing pains him, but not out of love for Edith. It's something else, but we just don't know yet. Or the scene where Edith's father gets killed. We don't see who it is, but by the dress you can easily guess that it's Thomas's sister Lucille, played by Jessica Chastain. So you wonder what was in that document that he had that they had to resort to murder. This also tells us both of them are working together. All of this is before they go to the mansion, where the mask slips even more. I think it's done super well throughout the film as you learn bit by bit what is truly going on. And even Lucille's facade breaks when she yells at Edith. About halfway through, you learn that Thomas has actually married 3 other people in the past, which makes everything click. They killed them so they could finance Thomas's inventions. Now we just have to follow Edith as she pieces it together, and the scene where she finally does is great. It's tense, the audio of Thomas is sinister, and it's just a really well executed scene. Then everything falls apart afterwards. So it is revealed that Thomas and Lucille are in love, which... ew. It could have been used in some sort of interesting way, like to show their insanity, but the film doesn't really do anything with it, so it just feels gross. I feel like I'm missing something here, but it could have been executed a lot better. Ignoring that, I'm also not a fan of how Thomas seemingly changes his mind and tries to save Edith. The fact that he still loves her kind of ruins a lot of what I loved about the previous scenes. And I would have preferred if he didn't love Edith in the first place, which would have subverted the gothic romance genre. I also neglected to mention that this film has ghosts, which I find to be super underutilized. Like with other Del Toro films such as The Devil's Backbone or Pan's Labyrinth, the fantasy elements aren't the focal point, yet they are still important to their respective films. But with this, you could take the ghosts out entirely and the film would mostly be the same. Which is a shame since the ghosts look amazing and terrifying. All the brief scenes they're in are well made, but there isn't any thematic reasons why they are here. Overall, I did still love a lot of this film due to its really strong build-up. It's just the way it ended really left a bad taste in my mouth and harmed the film's chances of getting any higher.
So forget Hellboy and say Hellboy to Hellboy to.
Will you guys kill me if I said I liked Hellboy 2 more than the first film? It's just a lot more fun in my opinion, and it fixes one of my biggest flaws with the first film, its direction. It's far more distinct to GDT's style with its framing, camera movements, and gorgeous set design. It gives the film a lot more personality. There's some great scene transitions, the bit where Hellboy splatters a fairy's gut on screen is awesome, And there is an amazing animated opening that tells the story of the Golden Army, which is in this wooden art style, and it's just so cool. There was one flaw that does unfortunately carry over from the first film, and it's Liz. She is still very bland and kind of annoying. Her relationship with Hellboy is very half-baked and uninteresting. They get mad for some reason not well established, and then back together near the end of the film. It's just boring. There's this new romance with Abe and this elf princess, which is better. Still not amazing, and could have been expanded upon more, but it's kind of cute. I do love the idea that she is hurt when her brother is hurt. It creates some tension where Hellboy or Abe could kill her brother, but risk killing her as well. Her brother, the prince, is a good villain. I really like his design, and the way he fights is so cool. I love his spear that can expand and change forms. His relationship with his sister is quite good, and I like their contrasting personalities. The action scenes he is in are great with some pretty fun choreography. In general, the fight scenes are a lot more cleaner and more engaging than the first film, which is very appreciated. The main thing that I love about this film are the creatures and makeup. There are so many, and I love all of them. Of course, Abe and Hellboy are still great, but they introduced Johann Kraus, who I love to bits. He is this guy that is entirely made up with ectoplasm, so he has to wear this cool-ass suit to be able to fully contain it. And he just looks so cool. I love his design, especially how he talks. Speaking of, he is voiced by Seth MacFarlane, and to my surprise, he is really good in this role. He does a German accent, which sounds great, and I love his more lawful personality clashing with Hellboy's more chaotic personality. You do get a lot out of these two characters, and it's really fun. The other creatures are great. The two fairies are terrifying. They eat human bones, which just freaks me out so much. It's also a good contrast to the still creepy but more friendly fairies in Pan's Labyrinth. There is this giant forest god monster, which is breathtaking to look at. Its design is stunning, and all the plant bits that come off of it really strikes me. It's terrifying yet beautiful at the same time, and it really reminds me of Princess Mononoke in a way. The troll market is a goldmine for cool creatures. There's so many different designs that gives this otherworldly place so much life. It sort of replicates the appeal of the cantina scene in Star Wars. There's so many different creatures that you want to learn more about. I do want to point out this one amazing clip though.
Nice baby.
I'm not a baby, I'm a tumor.
My favorite of the creatures, however, is the Angel of Death. Her design is striking. She is played by Doug Jones, which is awesome, and I love how utterly terrifying she looks. Her headpiece looks like a fungus that took over her. Her wings have a bunch of eyes on them, and how she moves is just unnerving. But at the same time, there is a sense of benevolence to her. She isn't evil. She is just the personification of death. It's just an incredible effect that is among one of the best things Del Toro has ever put to screen. Overall, while still flawed, Hellboy 2 is a vast improvement from the first film with a lot more to offer.
Now welcome, folks, I mean it from the heart, because the greatest show is about to start.
Nightmare Alley is very different from most other Del Toro films. It doesn't have any supernatural elements, it's not that elaborate in its set design, but it still feels distinctly Del Toro, unlike films such as Pacific Rim or Hellboy. It's still very visually stunning, especially those wide shots at the carnival, the scene at the funhouse, and any scene that features fire, electricity, and especially blood. They all look amazing, and I'm partially kicking myself for not seeing the black and white director's cut of the film, as from the footage I've seen, it looks even better, and it invokes the noir vibe a lot more. But the only way I can see it is on Hulu, and I'd rather have the film not ruined by commercials. Seriously, commercials ruin films. I tried watching 12 Angry Men on the Roku channel since it was free, and it had some of the most bullshit and asinine ad placements I have ever seen that just makes the film's pacing go to a complete halt. Still a 10 out of 10 film though. Anyways, where was I? Ah yes, Nightmare Alley. Yeah, this film's pretty good. It's a long film being 2.5 hours long, but it is really well paced so you never feel bored at all. The first half of the film is set at a carnival in the late 30s, and it gets the aesthetic perfectly. And I enjoy a good chunk of the carnies lot, such as Willem Dafoe, who is Willem Dafoe, Ron Perlman and Mark Parvinelli, who play this duo that bullies the main character, and I just enjoy vibing with them. I wish they were in the film more, as they are really only in the first half, but whatever. The film follows Sam, played by Bradley Cooper, who becomes a medium. While I'm not huge on Bradley Cooper, he is pretty great in this role. It's someone that you get to see their downfall, as they get overwhelmed by greed and power, as well as showing why I hate these types of scams. It's really disgusting to see someone get manipulated by them into believing they are with deceased loved ones, and Stan embodies my hatred for them perfectly. How he manipulates this industrialist, played by Richard Jenkins, just breaks my heart. I can't believe this film made me feel sympathy for rich people, but they did. He didn't deserve anything that happened to him in this film. Nor did the judge whose wife killed him because of Stan's readings. I just wanted him to fall, and that he did. But this does lead to my biggest flaw with the film. So Cate Blanchett plays a therapist, and she is amazing in this role. But she is revealed to have been manipulating Stan the entire time, which came out of nowhere, and it was kinda confusing for me. But she still delivered an incredible performance, and it is karmic justice for Stan. One more thing. Near the start of the film, we were introduced to the geek, and I was initially confused on its inclusion, as he didn't really seem to connect with anything, but this was until the ending, where Stan becomes homeless, and then he finds himself applying to be in another carnival where he gets a job as a geek, and it all clicks. Early in the film, Stan is looking down on this poor man who is being forced to insanity and do these disgusting acts. And now he's gonna become the very thing he laid eyes on.
My name, it's pronounced Frankenstein.
We are now at Del Toro's most recent film, Frankenstein. While I've seen many interpretations of the Frankenstein story, I haven't actually read the original Mary Shelley novel. The closest thing I have experienced was this animatronic show that was at a museum that retold the story. But from what I know about the story, Del Toro's film does a great job at adapting it while doing things unique, which is what a good adaptation should strive for. It hits all the necessary themes I want out of a Frankenstein story, like playing God and the ethics of creation, man versus monster, prejudice, isolation, and everything in between. I think they handle most of these themes well, although some are pretty obvious, but I view that as a necessary evil because people somehow misinterpret the meaning of the story. The film achieves what no other adaptation has accomplished, and that is making me truly despise Victor as a character. Oscar Isaac does an impeccable performance as him. You truly get to see his ego grow as he believes he is higher than God, obsessed with curing death. A great scene that shows this is when he starts building the creature. You get to see the full brutal process in explicit detail. Every limb, every organ, being ripped off and put back together to give life to a creature that did not want to exist. It's horrifying to look at, yet Victor still continues. Afterwards, he is brutal to the creature, torturing it by leaving it in isolation, blaming it for things it never did for his own gain, and just being plain cruel. All of this is done excellently and makes him a true monster. The creature is also amazing. Let's get this out of the way first. The makeup is incredible. It truly looks like he is made up of different body parts stitched together, which other versions fail at doing. Jacob Elordi is so amazing as the creature that he somehow wraps circles around Oscar Isaac as Victor. You get to see his pain vividly, how he can never die. He is shot, burned, stabbed, but always heals. Immortality is the one thing I fear more than death, and this film validates my fears and then some. It's just utterly terrifying. Jacob also shows the creature's good and soft side, especially with the blind man. He has always been my favorite part of any adaptation, and this film is no exception. It allows the creature to finally rest and get some peace, even for a brief bit, as he finds someone that sees him as a man and not a monster. The set design is incredible. It has this gothic style that works so well with the vibe of the film, especially in the chapel with the giant statue head that reminds me of the Mouth of Truth, and the gigantic windows. It's so good. That being said, it's kinda obvious that green screen was used for a good chunk of shots, It's not that seamless and kinda sticks out in my mind. Mia Goth as Elizabeth is unfortunately just okay compared to the other great performances. No offense to Mia, as I found her excellent in Pearl. I mainly blame the script for not fleshing her character out more. While the practical effects are great, the CGI kind of sucks. Especially the animals. Like, oh my god, they feel so out of place. Especially compared to the amazing makeup. But other than these three main complaints, this is a very great film that is well worth watching, and I hope Del Toro keeps making incredible films like this. That is what I would have said if he included Baragon. Like, come on, Baragon is such a key figure in the Frankenstein mythos. And it's very important to his character. Why the hell would he cut him? Del Toro, you hack!
This is where you jump in with a rational explanation. I mean, ghosts don't exist, right?
Unless they do.
What?
The Devil's Backbone is the film that truly cemented Del Toro as an amazing director. It is set during the Spanish Civil War, and I think this film uses the setting to great effect. Since it may not be the main focus, it still impacts all the characters in the film. It was used so well that I was shocked to learn that the original draft took place during the Mexican Revolution, but either way, it's still an excellent setting. The film follows an orphan named Carlos, and he is fantastic. I love his relationship with the other kids as well as the adults. You get to feel his experiences, and it's all helped by the excellent child acting. But the orphan I like even more is the bully, Jaime. I love it when bully characters are given depth, and he is no exception. As the film progresses, you get to learn more and sympathize with him, and it's really effective, and it all culminates to his backstory with Santi, which is just heartbreaking. Before I talk about Santi, though, I should talk about the Doctor and the villain first. The Doctor is played by Federico Lupi, who is also the main character in Kronos, and he is amazing. While I did gag at the rum scene, the part that truly made me love the character was right after the explosion. You got to see his perspective of the aftermath, which is devastating to say the least. It is one of the most effective explosion scenes I've seen in any film, but the part where he confronts Carmen is just an emotional gut punch. Him reciting a poem as she dies, it's so good, I just can't. The villain Jacinto is probably the weakest link of the film for me, but he still serves the story well as the antagonist, and you really hate his guts after a point. Plus his defeat was satisfying. Now on to the ghost, Santi. And while he could have been used more within the story, I don't think the film is harmed whatsoever by his limited appearances. And the appearances he has are unnerving. Him chasing Carlos throughout the orphanage was frightening, and his appearance with the blood flowing from his gunshot wound is haunting. The direction of this film is fantastic. It uses its atmosphere to create a sense of dread for every scene, and it's really apparent in the aforementioned Santi scenes. The cinematography is also solid, with some standout shots being whenever the camera follows behind one of the kids, or the transition with the Doctor looking in the mirror. So overall, I love The Devil's Backbone, and it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't already.
He bangs chicks, good for him. He fucks dudes, got no problem with that. He starts fucking fish, that's taking it a step too far.
You know, we all have this one weird comfort movie that may be unorthodox, but they are films that make you feel calm and happy. Well, The Shape of Water is one of those films for me. Yes, I consider the fish sex movie to be one of my comfort movies. It just gives me a sense of joy and whimsy that not many other films can replicate, and as such I can look past its flaws. I think part of why this film works so well for me is the early 60s aesthetic it has going on. I have a soft spot for this era, and this film just sucks me into it perfectly. From the set design, the costumes, and of course the music. Not just the licensed music, which do fit the vibe, but also the score. It has this pleasantly beautiful mood to it that I love. The direction is also very strong. While it's not atmospheric like other Del Toro films are, it is still really well made. One shot in particular that stands out to me is when the water droplets dance on the window. It's not something I have ever seen before, and I love it for that. Eliza is an excellent character played by Sally Hawkins, who delivers an impeccable performance. Since the character is mute, she is heavily reliant on expressions, and Hawkins does an excellent job conveying her character. She is so likable and charming, and I oddly relate to her in a way. I can't really explain why. Maybe it's the fact that she is nonverbal like I am in public, or maybe her relationships with some of the side characters like Zelda or Giles, but I see myself in her, which helps make this more of a comfort movie for me. Speaking of, her relationship with Zelda and Giles are great. I love both characters, and they help give Eliza more personality. I love the amphibian man too. Firstly, the makeup is incredible like always, but he is also oddly adorable. I don't know, the way he vocalized just endears me to no end. He even pets kitties. Just ignore the fact he ate one in the scene prior. But I like to imagine that to be the cat from 9 Lives, so Kevin Spacey is dead. I watch so many shitty cat movies you have no idea. Back to the film, I also love how it makes you sympathize with him. You see, I watched The Creature from the Black Lagoon not too long ago, and while I enjoyed it for its technical achievements, I felt bad for the creature since he is minding his own business and these guys just invaded his habitat. And I know GDT felt the same, so he added a sense of sympathy for this creature, and I applaud him for that. Now on to the romance. This may seem crazy, but this may be one of my favorite movie romances of all time, alongside WALL-E and Whisper of the Heart. Hell, I can make a lot of parallels to WALL-E since with both of these romances, they are both mostly nonverbal, so the relationship is far more reliant on visuals and expressions, which I love. I think both Eliza and the amphibian man do a great job at this. Despite them not being able to speak, they still are able to communicate and have a mutual understanding for each other, and you truly get to see their affection for one another. My favorite scene in the film is when Eliza quietly sings to him, which I will admit makes me a little misty-eyed. And then it turns into a fantasy musical number out of nowhere. Yes, it makes no sense, but I still love it nonetheless. It's silly and incredibly charming at the same time. That being said, the sex scenes are a little weird. I don't think they are as bad as people say they are. I still love the visuals of the two floating in water, but it's still not really my thing. Though it is funny that no one questions or kink shames her for them. Like, hell yeah, I love that sort of acceptance. If I had one flaw with the film, it would be the villain played by Michael Shannon. He isn't that bad of a character, but he's still fairly uninteresting. I do like how much of a douche he is, and the fact he sewed his severed fingers back is brilliant, but for the most part, I found him generic. Good performance, though. I do also feel like some scenes talk down to the audience, such as during the sign language scene, which could have been easily subtitled instead. But this is still a film I love with all my heart, and while I do think Get Out deserves Best Picture more, I'm still glad this film won. But it doesn't matter, Uncle Ben, as Paddington 2 is better than both of them. Pan's Labyrinth is a masterpiece of both filmmaking and storytelling. So this film is very overtly an anti-fascist film, but what makes it stand out compared to the likes of Pinocchio is how it's executed. It is helped by the fact that the film is in the perspective of Ophelia, a child. So a lot of the film's straightforwardness with its fascism bad message makes a lot more sense to me. It is also presented in a very horrifying way, which emphasizes Ophelia's loss of innocence really well. But even then, there is a lot of hidden depth to its themes that perfectly tie into the greater narrative, namely with the fantasy elements, especially with the Pale Man, who I believe represents religious fascism. There are a lot of religious symbolism, such as the eyes on the plate being similar to the depictions of St. Lucy, his similarities to some Goya paintings, such as Saturn devouring his son, and of course the forbidden fruit. There's also the detail that the Pale Man is sitting where the captain was during the dinner scene, and the shoes of children showing how innocent lives are lost due to fascism. There's also other subtle religious references to fascism within the film, such as the captain wanting to be referred to as father, even though he is a false father like fascism is usually depicted. This all makes me appreciate the themes even more. Back to the fantasy stuff. It is up to interpretation whether what happens in the film is real or not, and I'm glad there isn't a clear answer to this since you can easily go both ways. You can say that the fantasy world is Ophelia's only escape of the world that is slowly being corrupted by fascism, or you can say it's real, as evidenced by her sneaking into the captain's office or how the mandrake seems to have an effect on her mother. I love it when movies leave things ambiguous, as it depends on how the viewer views it. The captain is an effective villain to me. I find him terrifying in the way he acts and how unremorseful he is. He is a very straightforward character, and I definitely get the complaints about him, but once again, that's sort of the point with how it's from Ophelia's perspective. She isn't gonna see any of the nuance in him. And the film doesn't need that, because he accomplishes what he needs to be as a character perfectly in my eyes. The technical aspects of the film are amazing, especially the effects. While the CGI isn't the best, the practical effects are amazing, especially with the Fawn and the Pale Man. They just look so incredible, and both are unnerving in very different ways. I already explained the Pale Man, but the Fawn is still very creepy, especially how he acts with Ophelia. There is definitely a nope factor that kicks in whenever I see him and Ophelia in the same room. In other words, this is not a Fawn I trust with a child. I do love his sound design where you hear wood creaking whenever he moves though. The lighting is excellent, with the Earth scenes being very drab and blue, helping the overall tone of the film. And while the fantasy stuff is far more brighter and elaborate, there is still a sense of unease. This is still not a safe space. However, there are still some bits of warmth. Whenever Ophelia is with her mother or Mercedes, the only two people she can trust, the score becomes a lot more calming and warm during these scenes, as opposed to the much more colder and intense score that most of the film has. The only other bit of calmness is after Ophelia dies and is sent to be with the king of the underworld. This is the only time the fantasy stuff felt safe, meaning that she is finally free from the horrors of fascism. Part of the reasons why I love Del Toro is that his endings tend to be grim, yet oddly optimistic at the same time. And Pan's Labyrinth is a great example of this. It is depressing, yes, but it still gives me hope. Ophelia is at peace, and the baby has a new home. It is by no means a happy ending, but is one with a tinge of optimism sprinkled in. Just a tiny bit of hope in a horrible world. It goes a long way, and it is enough to make life bearable, and Del Toro is excellent at communicating this. Pan's Labyrinth is a one-of-a-kind film, and is easily Guillermo Del Toro's magnum opus. This concludes this ranking. I enjoyed making this, and thank you all for watching, and see you next time.